Hey everyone, this is Jeff Murren. Thanks for joining me as we continue our conversation of Beowulf. And in these videos, I'm going to be looking specifically at the Seamus Heaney translation of the original Old English. In the last video, what we saw was our hero Beowulf has taken on and killed Grendel by ripping his arm straight off of his body and creating this wound from which he will never heal. The beast Grendel then goes down under the water where in the moors where he lives with the rest of Cain's clan, as it says there, and we see that the wound, the blood, and what it says wound slurry then spews forth, and he just doesn't make it. All right, but of course we've got a lot more book to go. So what is there left to get ourselves into? Well, we find out something in this next one, this next little installment here. All right. So I'm going to start looking at page 83. The last thing we saw was a song that the minstrel sang after, in celebration of Beowulf's triumph over Grendel. And there are some things in here that I think is interesting that we're going to mention. Some comparisons. I don't want to say that this is an intentional comparison, but some things I think we could compare to some of the relationships of people in, let's say, the Iliad or the Odyssey or something like that. So if you've read those works, then this should be, I think, somewhat interesting for you. All right, so on page 83, about 1171, 2, 3, 4, about 1174, it says, the bright court of Heorot had been cleansed. And now the word is that you want to adopt this warrior as a son. So if you remember, Hrothgar had said that he wants to adopt and bring in Beowulf sort of as an honorary member of his family. Okay? And this is Wealhtheow, the queen, speaking here. Says, the word is that you want to adopt this warrior as a son, so while you may bask in your fortune and then bequeath the kingdom and nation to your kith and kin. All right, so think about all the things that you're looking to dole out, but make sure, that everybody here is seen to for their value. All right, and we see on the next page, 85, line 1190, that Beowulf the Geat, okay, Hrothgar, they're Danes, Beowulf the Geat sat between the brothers. All right, and so he's sitting in between as an equal with Hrothgar's own children in this, all right? It says, the cup was carried to him, kind words spoken in welcome, and a wealth of wrought gold graciously bestowed, 2 arm bangles, a mail shirt and rings, and the most resplendent torque of gold I ever heard tell of anywhere on earth or under heaven. All of these lavish physical, monetary rewards of precious metals, they're heaping upon Beowulf for what he has accomplished for them. All right. Now skipping down to the bottom, the last 4 lines there, it says, then Wealhtheow pronounced in the presence of the company, take delight in this torque, dear Beowulf. Wear it for luck, and wear also this mail from our people's armory. May you prosper in them. And mail is, like this, the mail shirt, the interlinking chains as a garment for protection against swords or anything like that. Usually that was worn, often that was worn under a set of armor so that there were multiple layers, so swords and spears would have to get through several things before they actually pierce the flesh. All right, skipping a couple lines down, it says, you have won renown, still talking to Beowulf here. You have won renown. You are known to all men far and near, now and forever. Your sway is wide as the wind's home, as the sea around cliffs. And so, my prince, I wish you a lifetime's luck and blessings to enjoy this treasure. Enjoy it for a lifetime. All right, keep that in mind, because if we look down at the next section, she moves then to her place. Men were drinking wine at the rare feast. How could they know fate? The grim shape of things to come. Here they are, partying, drinking wine, enjoying themselves, bestowing gifts bestowing gifts on Beowulf, Beowulf receiving gifts, but there's a grim shape of things to come. The threat looming over many thanes as night approached and King Hrothgar prepared to retire to his quarters. Retainers in great numbers were posted on the guards, as so often in the past. Benches were pushed back, bedding gear and bolsters spread across the floor, and one man lay down to his rest, already marked for death. What is this? What is it referring to? One man doesn't know. He's laying down to go to sleep for the evening, unaware that he's not going to make it through the night. Okay. The next page, 1251, line 1251, page 89. They went to sleep. And one paid dearly for his night's ease, as has happened to them often, ever since Grendel occupied the Gold Hall, committing evil until the end came, death after his crimes. Then it became clear, obvious to everyone once the fight was over, that an avenger, Grendel has an avenger, that an avenger lurked and was still alive, grimly biding time. Grendel's mother. Uh-oh, Mama Bear's mad. Grendel's mother, monstrous hell bride, brooded on her wrongs. She had been forced down into fearful waters, the cold depths, after Cain had killed his father's son, felled his own brother with a sword. Okay, obviously going back, as we've mentioned before in these videos, to the story of Cain versus Abel in the first book of the Bible, Genesis. Cain kills his brother out of jealousy. The first murder, again, to remind, is fratricide, the killing of one's brother. Branded an outlaw, marked by having murdered, he moved into the wilds, shunned company and joy, and from Cain there sprang misbegotten spirits. Among them, Grendel, the banished, and accursed. All right, so his mother is out there. Someone murdered her son. It's time for those people to pay. And it's not like she's thinking, well, Grendel had it coming. These are cursed, murderous beasts, descendants of the first murderer, Cain. So what do they care, right? The last two lines of the page. She came to Heorot. All of a sudden, here she is, arriving already. There inside the hall, Danes lay asleep. Earls who would soon endure a great reversal once Grendel's mother attacked and entered. Her onslaught was less only by as much as an Amazon's warrior strength is less than an armed man's when one hefted sword, its hammered edge and gleaming blade slathered in blood, raises the sturdy boar ridge off a helmet. So really what he's saying there is, her onslaught was less only by as much as an Amazon's warrior strength is less than an armed man's strength whenever he goes at it. So really, is there much of a difference? Okay, whatever, by that time we're splitting hairs in how devastating she is compared to her own son. And we'll see just how devastating she is. All right, keep up with me. All right. Then in the hall, hard-honed swords were grabbed from the bench and many broad shields lifted and braced. There was little thought of helmets or woven mail when they woke in terror. They didn't have time to think about like, oh, let's put on all our armor, let's get ready to go. They were completely caught off guard. They did not suspect this in the same way that the Danish hadn't suspected Grendel all along. The Geats here aren't expecting Grendel's mother. All right, so now they're kind of in the position that the Danes had found themselves in those many years ago. There was little thought of helmets or woven. Okay, the Helldam was in panic, desperate to get out, in mortal terror the moment she was found. She had pounced and taken one of the retainers in a tight hold, then headed for the Fen. That's the one who had no idea that it was going to be really bad for him that night. Okay, to Hrothgar, this man was the most beloved of his friends he trusted between the two seas. She had done away with a great warrior, ambushed him at rest. So, the person that she takes is another Dane in truth here. And it's not just any Dane, it's Hrothgar's favorite. It's his right-hand man. I want you to keep this in mind, because I'm going to make a comparison here in just a second. We see, though, great, Beowulf was elsewhere. Earlier, after the award of treasure, the Geat had been given another lodging. There was uproar in Heorot. She had snatched their trophy, Grendel's bloodied hand. All right? Beowulf was going around. It's almost like, oh, you don't need to sleep here, Beowulf. You are our hero. Let's put you up in a really nice place and give you the rest that you have earned. And in the meantime, while he's there, Grendel's mom attacks and takes up one man. And the one man is Hrothgar's favorite. And she also then thinks to herself, that's my son's arm that they have. That's the wound that killed my own son. I'll be taking that with me. Thank you very much. All right. It's mine. I'm, almost like, my son needs to be buried with the rest of his body. All right. Skipping a few lines, it says, the old lord, the gray-haired warrior, was heart-sore and weary when he heard the news. His highest-placed advisor, his dearest companion, was dead and gone. Skipping down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to the 7th line on page 93. So Beowulf entered with his band in attendance, and the wooden floorboards banged and ranged as he advanced. So continuing to line 13:20, let's say 13:24. He says, this is Hrothgar speaking, he says, Aeschere is dead. He was Jormunlaf's elder brother, a soulmate to me, a true mentor, my right-hand man when ranks clashed and our boar crests had to take a battering in the line of action. Aeschere was everything in the world, everything the world admires in a wise man and a friend. So when I read all of this, that Grendel went after and took, not Grendel, but Grendel's mother went after and took Aeschere, who happened to be Hrothgar's right-hand man. It just makes me think of the relationship between Hector and Achilles and Patroclus. All right, that close bond that the two of them had, to where, as bad as all the other murders and devastation were, now it's hitting even closer to home. All right, because they've killed Grendel's, they've killed Grendel, and so the mother is like, that's my son. That is my closest companion, my blood. She goes in and takes out Aeschere, which happens to be as close to family, or close enough to be considered family, closest companion to Hrothgar. It's almost like a tit-for-tat situation. Okay. Skipping about 3 lines, it says, she has taken up the feud because of last night when you killed Grendel, wrestled and racked him in ruinous combat. Such a nice alliteration there. Since for too long he had terrorized us with his depredations. He died in battle, paid with his life, and now this powerful other one arrives, this force for evil, driven to avenge her kinsman's death. All right. So we see on page 95, people out in the middle of nowhere claiming that they have seen 2 creatures, one a male, one a female, or out in the waters. Like, there's this rumor about these creatures out on the moors, out in the wild. All right, so this is not something that is, they've talked about this as if it's folklore, but now they're determining here this folklore ain't just folklore. This is the real thing. All right. So line 1362 on page 95, it says, a few miles from here, a frost-stiffened wood awaits and keeps watch above a mere. The overhanging bank is a maze of tree roots mirrored in its surface. At night there, something uncanny happens. The water burns, and the mere bottom has never been sounded by the sons of men. Okay, so this is a nice little symbolic moment here. Where Grendel and his mother live is under this water, but their evil is so much that it's almost like the hell. The fire within them burns so much that it goes up and sets the water of the moors on fire. All right? And its depths are so deep that no one's ever swam down to find just how deep it is. So you get this idea of this hellish place, so deep under water, okay? But the depths of it are way down there, and it's so filled with their evil that the water itself burns, okay? That's a pretty powerful image there. All right, page 97. Hrothgar says, about 4 lines down, now help depends again on you. Speaking, of course, to Beowulf, and you alone. The gap of danger where the demon waits is still unknown to you. Seek it if you dare. I will compensate you for the settling of the feud as I did the last time with lavish wealth, coffers of coiled gold if you come back. Beowulf, son of Ecgtheow, spoke. Wise sir, do not grieve. It's always better to avenge dear ones than to indulge in mourning. For every one of us, living in this world means waiting for our end. Let whoever can win glory before death. All of this to me is so reminiscent of a lot of the ideas in the Iliad. It is always better to avenge dear ones than to indulge in mourning. Achilles for Patroclus. For every one of us, living in this world means waiting for our end. Let whoever can win glory before death. Reminds me of a lot of the conversations that Hector had with Andromache, all right? I know that I could just go off and leave, but, and remain safe. But the glory is mine for my generations to come if I die in battle. All right? That idea still carries on even in this culture. All right? He ends up right there saying to Hrothgar, bear up and be the man I expect you to be. So Hrothgar does bear up, as Beowulf said, and goes with them as they set out to find where Grendel's mother is. So in this case, they waited for Grendel to come to them, and Beowulf laid himself out in the hall. But that's not the case this time. This is so personal that it is now they are going out more on the attack rather than playing defense and just defending the hall. They're going out and seeking her. So about 5 lines down on page 99, it says, so the noble prince proceeded undismayed up fells and screes among narrow footpaths and ways where they were forced into single file, ledges on cliffs above layers of water monsters. So here we go. We're getting out into this place where we've heard about these other creatures of Cain's clan, and so we're on these ledges over this water, all right? And, so tight sometimes these paths that they have to be single file, looking down and seeing the water monsters. He went in front with a few men, good judges of the lie of the land, and suddenly discovered the dismal wood, mountain trees growing out at an angle above gray stones, the blood-shot water surged underneath. It was a sore blow to all of the Danes, friend of the Shieldings, a hurt to each and every one of that noble company when they came upon Ashuray's head at the foot of the cliff. So that's her calling card. As they're getting up and close to where she is, they discover that she has left Ashuray's head as, like, in the same way they left Grendel's arm up on the roof, she's left Ashere's head there. All right, quite a statement, upping the ante, if you will. Everybody gazed as the hot gore kept wallowing up, and an urgent war horn repeated its notes. The whole party sat down to watch. The water was infested with all kinds of reptiles. There were writhing sea dragons and monsters slouching on slopes by the cliff, serpents and wild things such as those that often surface at dawn and roam the sail road and doom the voyage. Okay, so we are in a place, we find ourselves, the Geats and those Danes who went on this, they're finding themselves in a place uninhabitable by man, but definitely taken up with all kinds of creatures of the dark. All right, this is line 1442 on page 101. Beowulf got ready, donned his war gear, indifferent to death. Skipping about 5 or 6 lines, says, to guard his head he had a glittering helmet that was due to be muddied on the mere bottom and blurred in the upswirl. It was of beaten gold, princely headgear hooped and hasped by a weaponsmith who had worked wonders in days gone by, and adorned with boar shapes. Since then it had resisted every sword. So this is a tried and true trusty helmet he's putting on, made of gold, which I find interesting, knowing now what a soft metal that is. But anyway, this is interesting. If you remember who Unferth was the one who challenged Beowulf when he first got there, and Beowulf put him in his place. You know, said, oh, I hear you're the one who swam with Brecca and lost. He's like, yeah, I lost because I was busy. All right, if you remember that. But here we go. Unferth offers him something. It says, and another item lent by Unferth. At that moment of need was of no small importance. The Brehorn handed him a hilted weapon, a rare and ancient sword named Hrunting. So the sword that he gives him has its own name. That's how well known this sword is. Okay, like an Excalibur type of a situation. Okay, the iron blade with its ill-boding patterns had been tempered in blood. It had never failed the hand of anyone who hefted it in battle. Anyone who had fought and faced the worst in the gap of danger. This was not the first time it had been called on to perform heroic feats. So the helmet is one that has never been damaged by any blows, and so the defense is as good as it gets. The offense is as good as it gets with the sword, because that sword is one that has never ever failed. And it's even more meaningful because it was Unferth that gave it to him. Continuing on. When he lent that blade to the better swordsman, Unferth, lent that blade to the better swordsman, Beowulf, Unferth, the strong-built son of Ecglaf, could hardly have remembered the ranting speech he had made in his cups. He was not man enough to face the turmoil of a fight underwater and the risk to his life. So, there, he lost fame and repute. It was different for the other, rigged out in his gear, ready to do battle. All right. So this is the way they're making the distinction between the great Geats and the great Danes. All right. And Beowulf made this claim early. He says, Unferth, if you were half the man that you're claiming you are, I wouldn't have to be here. I wouldn't ever have had to come to fight Grendel, because you would have done your job. And now here he is doing yet another job, Beowulf is. And it's Unferth who is saying, essentially, you got me, dude. You're better than I am. All right? Skipping 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines on 1480, line 1480 on page 103, it says, if this combat kills me, take care of my young company and my comrades in arms. This is Beowulf speaking here. And be sure also, my beloved Hrothgar, to send Heilik the treasures I received. Let the Lord of the Geats gaze on that gold. Let Hrethel's son take note of it, and see that I found a ring giver of rare magnificence and enjoyed the good of his generosity. All right, so I want these goods to go to my king. And so I will have fame, and you will have fame, because he will know that you are wealthy and generous both. And Unferth is to have what I inherited. Ooh, what a big man. Unferth, this person who just gave me Hrunting, the person that gave me so much grief when I got here, I want him to have what I have earned. To that far-famed man I bequeath my own sharp-honed, wave-sheened wonder-blade. With Hrunting I shall gain glory or die. After those words, the prince of the weather geats was impatient to be away and plunged suddenly. Without more ado, he dived into the heaving depths of the lake. It was the better part of a day before he could see the solid bottom. That's how long he went under there. Now, this is what we would consider probably the Catawbas moment, the belly of the whale moment, okay? This is the underworld moment from the Odyssey, okay? This is when, kind of like Odysseus goes into the underworld and learns a lot about his fate and comes back somebody who is ready to go and knows the path home. This is a similar circumstance now. It's not the same, it's not a spiritual one, it's physical, but the same implications are there, similar implications are there. All right, so on page 105, line 15, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1506, it says, that wolfish swimmer carried the ring-mailed prince to her court. All right. So line 1507 on page 105, what we see is, as Beowulf gets down there, he is captured by Grendel's mother. Okay, line 1507, that wolfish swimmer carried the ring-mailed prince to her court, so that for all his courage he could never use the weapons he carried. So when he gets into her area, that Hrunting, that's nothing. That could just be a piece of tinfoil now, all right? And a bewildering horde came at him from the depths, droves of sea beasts, who attacked with tusks and tore at his chainmail in a ghastly onslaught. So he's getting things from all areas, okay? Now, continuing on, it says, the hero observed that swamp thing from hell, the Tarn hag in all her terrible strength, then heaved his war sword and swung his arm. The decorated blade came down ringing and singing on her head, but he soon found his battle torch extinguished. The shining blade refused to bite. It spared her and failed the man in his need. It had gone through many hand-to-hand fights, had hewed the armor and helmets of the doomed, but here at last the fabulous powers of that heirloom failed. Thanks for nothing, Unferth. All right. It says on 107, 3 lines down, he flung his sword away. It's of no use to me now. Skipping a line, it says he would have to rely on the might of his arm. All right. Again, we kind of see the same ideas. If you want to look at something we mentioned earlier, kind of similar to some things we were mentioning with the Iliad on line 1530, it says, it was all about his name and fame. And then down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines under that, it says life doesn't cost him a thought. So he's going at everything, no matter what the cost, because his life doesn't matter. It's all about his name and all about his fame as he's fighting, okay? So Grendel's mom actually pulls a knife on him, okay, and starts, taking jabs, but the chainmail, this stuff, actually holds and works and protects him. Line 1553, it says, Holy God decided the victory. It was easy for the Lord, ruler of heaven, to address the balance once Beowulf got back up on his feet. He then saw a blade that boded well, a sword in her armory, an ancient heirloom from the days of the giants, an ideal weapon, one that any warrior would envy. So he sees a huge sword that is hers and thinks to himself, aha, all right? But it was so huge and heavy, it says on page 109, but so huge and heavy of itself, only Beowulf could wield it in battle. Okay? So the shielding's hero, hard-pressed and enraged, took firm hold of the hilt and swung the blade in an arc. The resolute blow that bit deep into her neck bone and severed it entirely. Toppling the doomed house of her flesh, she fell to the floor. The sword dripped in blood. The swordsman was elated. All right. So he uses her own sword against her to chop her head off. Little did we know when we saw Ashere's head at the bottom of that cliff, that was a foreshadowing moment to say, aha, there we go. Beowulf's going to do the same thing. So we tear off Grendel's arm. She cuts off Ashere's head. We cut off her head. Boom, boom, boom. Back and forth. Tennis match. All right? So he looks around. Beowulf looks around. And about line 15, let's say 1586, it says, he saw the monster in his resting place. So he sees Grendel there. You know, he went down under the water and died there. He's still there. It says, the weary and wrecked, a lifeless corpse, a casualty of the battle in Heorot. The body gaped at the stroke dealt to it after death. Beowulf cut the corpse's head off. All right, chops off Mom's head. Had already ripped Grendel's arm off. Now cuts Grendel's head off too. We see on page 111 the people waiting, you know, up above the water. You know, that's like we have the scene underwater. Now we pulled back up above the water to all the people waiting and wondering what's going to happen. And it's interesting here because about 5 lines down it says they never again expected to see that prince returning. I think that's interesting. Knowing how tough he was, but then knowing how, you know, tough it would be to fight Grendel's mother on her own turf with all the other creatures around. You know, he did have some odds stacked against him. Line 1600, the 9th hour of the day arrived. The brave shieldings abandoned the cliff top, and the king went home. Hrothgar said, I don't know. But he was sick at heart, it says, staring at the mirror. The strangers held on. The others stayed. They wished, without hope, to behold their lord Beowulf himself. They weren't hoping for it. They were just wishing for it. All right? But Beowulf ascends back up the water. Okay? And he's brought so many other things with him, including Grendel's head. Page 113, line 1632. With high hearts, they headed away along footpaths and trails through the fields, roads that they knew, each of them wrestling with the head they were carrying from the lakeside cliff. Men kingly in their courage and capable of difficult work. It was a task for 4 to hoist Grendel's head on a spear and bear it under strain to the bright hall. Beowulf killed him. Killed him with his bare hands. Killed the mother underwater on her own terms. Cut his head off, swam with the head up, and the head, though, is so heavy that it takes 4 normal guys to put it on a spear and to carry it back. All right, so we're getting the sense of how much Beowulf is different than the rest of the people. Skipping about 4 lines, it says, in he came then, the Thane's commander, the arch warrior, to address Hrothgar. His courage was proven, his glory secure. Grendel's head was hauled by the hair, dragged across the floor where the people were drinking, a horror for both queen and company to behold. They stared in awe. It was an astonishing sight, and I'm sure it was. All right. Skipping up a couple pages to 117, line 1703. Hrothgar addresses him and says, Beowulf, my friend, your fame has gone far and wide. You are known everywhere. In all things you are even-tempered, prudent, and resolute. So I stand firm by the promise of friendship we exchanged before. Forever you will be your people's mainstay and your own warrior's helping hand. All right. And lastly, on page 121, line 1758, Hrothgar mentions to him, "O flower of warriors, beware of that trap. Choose, dear Beowulf, the better part, eternal wards. Do not give way to pride. For a brief while your strength is in bloom, but it fades quickly. And soon there will follow illness, or the sword to lay you low, or a sudden fire, or surge of water, or jabbing blade or javelin from the air, or repellent age. Your piercing eye will dim and darken, and death will arrive, dear warrior, to sweep you away." So don't waste it with prideful things, okay? And he's essentially saying that no life, as it mentions there in the notes, no life is immune to danger, and he should know, all right? He should know because he's Hrothgar. And Hrothgar had done so well in battle and amassed so many riches as a result that he was able to build Heorot and sit there and rule and be the magistrate and dispense the laws and have the people here. And even Hrothgar, though, could be laid low by something like Grendel, something he never considered or even saw coming or anything, and it was devastating. So don't become as prideful as maybe I became when I set out to build Heorot in the first place, because something can still bring you down. Foreshadowing? All right. That's where I'm going to leave it. Okay? So, continue reading on your own, annotating on your own, and coming up with your own thoughts. And until next time, and as always, happy reading.